All right, let's start off with the offense first, as we always do. So obviously, this puts the wrap on the season, and I'm not gonna, as much as I want to right now, I'm not gonna go through the entire season. We're just gonna focus on this game. I'll save that for the podcast. But just talking about specifically this game, obviously it was a surprise when, I think hours before the game, Adam Schefter reported that David Fells would be the. Well, I don't know. He didn't say he would be the starter, but he certainly was the starter in the game. I think Jay Cutler played one series, which was an embarrassment. I mean, if we're just going to play David, he should have played at the start. I hate that, quarterback by committee. Never in the history of the NFL, except I think in the 50s with Norm Van Brocklin and whatever the other guy's name was, Bob Waterfield or whatever his name was, worked one time in NFL history. And it's just it's embarrassing as a franchise to see that happen to your team, where you have two different quarterbacks starting. It's really embarrassing. But anyway, that was a surprise, having David Fales play the entire game. And obviously it sucked as a fan to watch. Obviously, Adam's trying to see what he has in his young players, which is the smart thing to do. But it sucked as a fan to watch because basically we're just raising the white flag. And it felt like we were raising the white flag. Obviously, we fought very hard, and he wasn't the only backup to start in that game. Obviously, we had a ton of young players get a lot of looks. When you talk about Gabe Wright, you talk about Cameron Malveaux, who had a tremendous game. Every time he's played, he's had a tremendous game. Zach Stirrup, who played due to injury, but I have a feeling that they wanted to see what he had in him as well. Obviously, basically the entire offensive line, we talk about left tackle to right tackle, wasn't, the what it looked like at the beginning of the year with our depth chart. So it felt like this game especially, and it was frustrating because I really wanted to play spoiler to the Bills, and, say what you will, but I mean, obviously there are division rivals. You don't want to see another AFC East team make the playoffs, more than we already have to with the Patriots. So that was difficult to watch, but, it was just sucked. It sucked because it was like, obviously that was the plan going into the game. And to be honest with you, when you talk about David Fales and his performance, and obviously he had a pretty strong preseason, so it was interesting to see what he would do. He played like a fourth, fifth string quarterback at times. He showed some good things, but mostly not really. I felt like he struggled to read coverages at times. We took some timeouts that we didn't need to take because of that. I felt like, David really doesn't read the field very well. His accuracy is not very good. It seems, there's some things that he's definitely not a starting quarterback. I don't even think he's a backup quarterback. He missed some wide open throws, and like I said, his vision of the field really cost us in this game. We had a wide open Devontae Parker on the right hand side of the field for a touchdown that he completely missed. Obviously, he had pressure coming from his right side, but you would like to see a quarterback stand into the pocket, take a hit, and make that throw, because it was a pretty easy throw, and that literally probably would have went for a touchdown. Obviously, then he ends up throwing the interception to Jordan Poyer. He threw it in the middle of nowhere, which is something also you don't want to see. Either the ball sailed on him, or again, he's just struggling to read coverages. So that was, again, what do we expect from David Fales? And again, I'm not saying, listen, I never wanted to see what David Fales had. I think we all kind of knew. He's definitely played his best football under Adam Gase, because when he was with Chicago, he definitely was a totally different player. But again, there were some good things and some bad things with him. I felt like he dealt with pressure well in the pocket. I felt like his pocket presence was relatively good. He was able to avoid some sacks and extend plays, but other than that, it wasn't really anything special. So, and he's definitely not the future of this franchise. I can tell you that right now. So his performance was it was what it was. It was a fourth string quarterback. Like I said, there were times where the drive could have been extended, but he missed some throws, and that's unfortunate. It is what it is. So, moving on from that, some of the other young players that, got some playing time, AJ Derby, he made a couple of good plays there. He didn't see a lot. He saw some action. He lined up a lot, but he didn't get his hands on a lot of balls, but he did make a couple of big plays. Obviously, Jakeem Grant showed up again in this game. He had a pretty big imprint on this game. there was a couple times, like I said, there was a drive that we drove inside the 20-yard line. We were deep into Bills territory. Jakeem Grant ran a great route, just couldn't hit him on it. And there was a couple other plays that he made that were great plays, like Jakeem. The screen game with Jakeem, since Adam Gase has been here, the screen game has been literally terrible. And if you guys go back to the beginning of this, people complain about, just as a sidebar here, really quick, people complain about the repetitiveness of the offense at the beginning of the season. If you watch the offense from week 1 through week 4, and then we fast forward all the way to week 16 or 14 through 17 or even deeper than that, it is a completely different offense. Like, it's not even the same. Adam Gase really tried everything that he could to fix this offense, and he wasn't complacent. He wasn't banging his head against the wall. He literally, it went through like a metamorphosis, for God's sakes, through the entire season, unlike anything that I've probably ever seen, really. He really tried. So anyway, the screen game really worked when Jakeem Grant's number was called, and he was, he's able to break a couple tackles because of his special team background since he's been in the NFL, and make a couple people miss in the open field, and get some really good gains there. But he had a really nice into his season, and I think that gives me even more confidence in him moving forward. That I feel like he's going to be a good player for a long time. For us, he's going to be a very good role player. Like I said, I don't think he's ever going to be Tyreek Hill. I don't think he's ever going to be anything super duper spectacular, but I do think he is a solid, really good, solid role player in this league that has very, obviously has big play potential. So he had a very nice end to his season. Devontae Parker, I'm not going to say it was disappointing, but obviously I wanted a little bit more from him in the last game of the season. Obviously, it could have been even bigger if he had a better quarterback. Obviously, I'm not going to say it's all his fault, because it's clearly not. Devontae, obviously, I could be sitting here talking about how crazy of a comeback we had if it wasn't for our quarterback situation. So, it is what it is, but, Devontae, I thought, he made a couple nice plays here and there, but it definitely wasn't what we wanted out of him for the last game of the year. Juice Landry was Juice Landry. Obviously, he looked like he was going for that 1,000 yards in this game. He was playing very hard, and obviously he has a reputation with the Bills. Going back, all the way. Him and Ronald Darby hated each other when Darby was a Bill, but he's always hated the Bills, always getting in scrums with the Bills. So he played very hard in this game. He made a couple great plays. He had one drop, which is obviously the most uncharacteristic thing that Jarvis Landry could ever do. But there was a couple times where he was so wide open, it blew my mind. Jarvis is a very, very good player. Kenyon didn't touch the ball nearly enough in this game, and clearly we were trying to see what Fales had. But I felt like Kenyon. I just thought this whole game was a tryout for a lot of different players. Like, what do they have going into the off season? And that was pretty prevalent when Kenyon barely touched the ball at all. And maybe 10 attempts out of 2 out of 10 attempts did he ever have a barely negative play. Kenyon he had a great game when he touched the ball. He looked great, but unfortunately he didn't get the ball enough, which I think was by design anyway. But when he had the ball in his hands, he had a very nice game. He looked very good. That was basically it on the offense. There wasn't anything obviously there's not a lot that we didn't already know, that we didn't find out from all these young players starting. Zach Stirrup, the 6'9" tackle out of Wisconsin. Really interested to see what he could have done. He really struggled against Jerry Hughes, and not just in the pass protection, but also in the run defense as well. When I say struggle, I guess struggles especially in pass protection. He didn't struggle in pass protection because he definitely was solid, but I think all around his performance wasn't great. That was, we didn't see a lot of Thomas Durante, who was obviously on the roster, which is disappointing. It was a give and take here. To be honest with you, I didn't think we found out anything that we don't already know. So other than that, Jakeem Grant is legit. I think he is I think in the future he's going to be a good role player. We already knew Kenyon has a really bright future, so I wasn't looking anything, and obviously we already knew that, or he would have gotten the ball a lot more. Yeah, all in all, it was literally I mean, I'm not gonna say it was I mean, it was basically a tryout game. And not to talk trash or anything, but I feel compelled to say it because it is obvious. The fact that game was a one possession game at the end of the game is a joke. I do not know how in the world. And you know what? Adam Gase is a great coach, because any other NFL coach with a fifth string quarterback, and listen, David Fells is not a world beater, man. He's not a bad he's not a bad fifth string quarterback, but he's still a fifth string quarterback. And I thought he was definitely going to turn the ball over more than he did. Obviously, at the end of the game, he reverted back into some of the reasons he's not a starter in the NFL. But the fact that we were that close to beating a Bills team that was trying to make the playoffs is ridiculous. I honestly, they should have beat us. They should have beat our cheeks pretty hard. They should have destroyed us, but they didn't. And I think that's a great sign for Dolphins fans. And I know that sounds weird, but I mean, seriously, we had a lot of young people out there that didn't play all year. Literally. We have people that we picked up off the street a few weeks back that are on the field right now, and somehow we barely lost. David Fells wasn't even on the roster for the entire year. Obviously, after preseason cuts, we let him go, and we still somehow. I mean, I don't understand. Like, it was, again, obviously they don't give trophies out for effort, but this team played very hard with not a lot to work with, and I think as a fan, it sucked to watch a game where we basically gave up. We weren't trying to win this game. I honestly do believe that. We were trying to see what our young players have. But in saying that, they all played very hard and they all played very well for what was expected of them. I mean, I'm not expecting them to be a team that's trying to get, a playoff hopeful team that's trying to get in. So they did a very good job for what they were dealt with, and I thought there was some, like I said, we found there wasn't anything that we didn't already know that we found out, but Jakeem Grant, there were some gems in there. So let's move on to the defense. All right, let's talk about the defensive side of the football. And when we talked about the offensive side and how a lot of young players played, I mean, a ton of young players played on the defensive side of the football. I think since Sue has been here, that had to have been a career low in snaps taken. He did not play his usual every snap. You know what I mean? Usually Sue literally plays every snap. In this game, obviously, he had a lot of time off, which is interesting. Maybe we were trying to see what we would look like without him because of the big contract situation that's coming up this offseason. So maybe that had a role to play in it. And we were just saying, okay, so what would we look like without Sue? And to be honest, when he wasn't on the field, it wasn't all that bad. We had some good plays, but when Sue got back out there, you could say, oh yeah, that's why we pay him all that much money. It's because he can make plays like that. Yeah, Sue, again, players that replace Sue, like Gabe Wright, they played okay. There was a couple different plays where like, okay, well, that's why you're not a starter in the league. But, again, there were some young players that I was very impressed with on the defensive side of the football, especially. And let's get into those guys. Obviously, again, before we do that, let me hold myself here. We did not play a perfect game on defense. Obviously, we let up 22 points. There was busted coverages all over the field. For some reason, we really struggled to cover Ron O'Leary, who is primarily a blocking tight end. Obviously, he's had a pretty decent career down there in Buffalo as a receiving tight end. I'm not saying he's completely inept at doing that, but he's not a crapping Rob Gronkowski, for God's sakes, which he seems to be like when he plays us. He should have had 2 touchdowns. Tyrod missed him in the end zone once. And then the other one, obviously, he caught wide open in the right. And for some reason, we just continue to give opening drive touchdowns to the Bills as well. But anyway, some of the other things that we struggled with as a defense as a whole, we could not get off the field on third down as much as I would have liked us to. I feel like as the game, really weird. Our defense, every time we play the Bills, except, in 2016, our defense got better as the game went along. Maybe it's because we figured out the lineup that worked best against the Bills, because obviously we kept, interchanging the ends. And we're going to talk about a certain defensive end here in a second. But, yeah, I felt like I I just felt like we definitely should have gotten off the field a lot more in this game. Cameron Wake made a couple of good plays. Andre Branch made a couple of amazing plays. And obviously Cameron Malvo, who, in my opinion, I mean, that man, dude, he needs to seriously we need to keep him around because he is an explosive player. He is a very explosive player. I mean, he jumps off the screen when you watch him. So and we'll talk about that here in a second. But again, I felt like we should have gotten off the field, and that's something that we've struggled against Tyrod Taylor for many moons. It's just we can't get off the field on third down. Tyrod against us has done a great job of extending plays, and obviously you can't. In the NFL, you can't consistently cover for it. Dude, it literally took him 5 seconds to convert a third down. Our defense played well, but you can't let that happen. Obviously, our rush lanes were terrible again. For some reason, Matt Britt can't figure out with what? In the last 3 weeks we've played them, for God's sakes. Maybe you could have probably figured out a better game plan against him. Obviously, Matt Britt tried a lot of different things as the game went along. There's one third down where we only rushed three, or maybe even two, and spied Sue. And that's some Madden stuff right there. I mean, I haven't seen that in so long. But Sue, so we tried a lot of different things to try to keep him in the pocket. It just didn't work. So it is what it is. Tyrod has some kind of lucky charm against us, and he played very well. I'm not taking anything away from him because he's a very tough player to defend in general, but he is not a good rhythm thrower. I mean, if it takes you 5 seconds to convert a third down, you're not going to have a long career in the NFL. And again, if we could have just figured out a way to keep him in the pocket, they wouldn't move the ball on us because their run game was very inconsistent against us. Towards the end of the game, Mike Tolbert kind of went off a little bit there. He popped off a couple times, but I felt like our defense was wearing down at that point because they were running the football the entire game. And obviously Sean McDermott comes from the Panther, like we're going to run the football down your crapping esophagus, for God's sake. So that's how they've played all year. But, they were very inconsistent in the running game. And what I mean by that, they popped a couple big runs off, but there was nothing insane. And we had a lot of plays where we hit him in the backfield. If our offense could have stayed on the field longer and given our defense a little bit of a rest, we would have played better down the stretch in the fourth quarter. So yeah, those are some of the things that we didn't do great, and some of the things we did well. But yeah, and again, like I said, Tyrod, when you watch the game, you're like, wow, Tyrod, but listen, man, he relies a lot on his ability to get loose. And if he plays a defense that is well coached, really, and just knows how to, has a great game plan in front of him, and just keeps him in the pocket, he really struggles to throw in rhythm. And like I said, if it takes you 5 seconds to convert a third down, you're not going to be very successful in the NFL. But against us, apparently, hey, anything goes. So yeah, that was great. So yeah, and to talk about some of the young players that I'm super impressed with, and stop talking about some of the negative. Stephon Anthony continues to be very impressive. The only big play he gave up was to Charles Clay on a little pig shallow cross route that is very hard to get through, obviously, and in many NFL, like Luke Kuechly, everybody struggles at defending that. It was just a good call by the Bills, but he had a great game, man. I honestly was like, dude, can we just bench Kiko in the middle of the field and start Stephon there? Because man, oh man, is he a good player. He's a great open field tackler. He's really good in coverage. He's sideline to sideline. He has that sideline to sideline speed, and when he hits, he hits. He's a thumper. He brings a physicality to this defense. I thought he played amazing. I want to continue to see him on this defense for a very long time. He was 100% worth a 5th round pick because I think he does have a bright future. A year under the regime, and in the building, I think was obviously going to do him well, and I think he has a Pro Bowl caliber future with this franchise. I really do. He's impressed me a lot, and I love him. I think he's going to be a good player for many moons to come. And to move on from that, some other players that I thought played well. To talk about Cordrea, I thought he played well. They didn't hit their receivers a ton in this game, if you think about it. But he had his worst play of his career so far here, where he didn't have to, but he just molested, Thompson on the right-hand side there, and it would have been incomplete either way. He had good coverage if he just would have trusted it and not panicked and just looked up, and that's something he struggled with coming out of college, then he would have been incomplete and no pass interference was called. That was legitimate pass interference, but he shouldn't have face guarded. He should have just turned his head around, and he would have been okay, but he didn't. So other than that, he played pretty okay. He played pretty well. Cameron Malveaux, to talk about him some more. What a game he had. He was in the backfield. He had a huge sack on Tyrod Taylor. He was all over the place. In the running game, in the passing game, he was consistently there. I wish we would have played him more this season. I feel like he just brings this explosiveness to this defense that it desperately needs at times. And, he really helped us in that game. So there were some good young players on that defensive side of the football that really impressed me. Rashad and TJ continued to play pretty dang well, pretty dang good football. TJ struggled in coverage a couple times. Charles Clay beat him a little bit on some of those routes, but it's give and take here and there. Gabe, the right kid in the middle of that defense, he played okay. Jordan Phillips had a really nice game as well. There's a lot of young players on the defense that, played pretty good on defense. You take away some of those 5-second long plays, almost 6 seconds long, where would this defense be? Who knows? But that is something if Tyrod is the Bills quarterback going forward, we have to figure out something in the offseason or in the draft. We have to figure out a lineup or a sub-package that works at defending his speed on the edges. Because if we can't figure that out, then we either need a new defensive coordinator or then we just need to cut a lot of people on that defensive line. Because it's only, and again, I've said this before, it's against a lot of mobile quarterbacks that we have struggled to contain. And that is something we need to fix. And I think Cameron, kid out of Houston, I think he could be an answer to that, that puzzle piece there. So, it sucks that this is the 2017 season. I'm actually glad that it's over. I'm sick and tired of watching a Jay Cutler-led offense, and it literally hurts my head every time. So I'm glad this is done. It's nice to see some young players play well, especially the Houston kid and Stephon Anthony. I'm very impressed with them. And moving forward, I'm tired. Moving forward, I'm tired of watching this team. Moving forward, I love the future of this team. I really do. Like I said, the fact that we were that close to beating them. And think about it, if we beat that, dude, I would have been so happy if we beat that team with the lineup that we went into that game with, because the fact that it was even close is impressive. Some of the things that I'll say, because for some reason I feel like I can't hold it back, I need to talk about it. Some of the things that I feel like we need to fix in the offseason. We need a new defensive coordinator. I honestly believe that. Maybe, Matt Burke, this was his rookie year. He hasn't ever done it before. Maybe he improves in year 2. But I actually kind of would like us, Advances Free or somebody else who's a vet in this league a veteran defensive coordinator. I would like to pluck him out. Maybe Jack Del Rio, somebody like that, if he's, willing to coach a defense. I would love to do that. I honestly loved what Sean McVay did. He made a very smart decision, especially since it was first year. It was his first year head coaching, to get Wade Phillips to just okay, you control the defense. I love that idea. And if we could find a veteran, there's a lot of the Paganos are out there. We could get a lot of people. This upcoming coaching off season to bring in to coach this defense, I would think that would be a good move for this team. I think that's something that we need. Not that, like I said, Matt Burke isn't terrible, but I think there are certain calls in games where that didn't need to be called, or we could have done that differently, or maybe if the game plan was better here, we would have had more success. And I feel like if we had a veteran defensive coordinator, that would help us out a lot. So, I think that's one of the things that needs to happen in this offseason for us to, and not that it would halt any progress or we would be a worse team for it, but I think it would definitely improve the team. if we got a veteran defensive coordinator. So that is it. That puts the bow on the 2017 season. Like I said, I think we're all sick. Thank God we don't have to watch this anymore, and we can fix it. Now we're in fixing mode, which is great. So I'm SkyX3. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think we need a new defensive coordinator? Would you like to see a vet like Vance Joseph or John Pagano or some of those coaches come in and take over this defense? Because I would love that. And I'm SkyX3, and I'll see you guys in the next one.